Hey everybody, it's Larry from Flying L Comics. Today we're going to be doing some mad scientist stuff. I'm going to be mixing some sodium dithionite and some ETDA. And we're going to take a look at how the effect it has on removing staple rust from the comic books. Okay, so right now we're going to go ahead and mix 15 grams of sodium dithionite with 100 milliliters of distilled water. The water is being heated to 140 degrees Fahrenheit. The melting point of the sodium dithionite is 126 degrees Fahrenheit. Now we don't want to go any higher than that because once we do, the temperature will cause decomposition of the sodium dithionite, and at approximately 100 Celsius or 212 degrees, it becomes fully combustible. So while we're waiting right now for this to mix up, let's talk a little bit about the reaction of sodium dithionite with the rust, which is iron oxide or ferric oxide. Sodium dithionite causes the ferric oxide to release an atom during the process, and that turns it into ferrous oxide or iron 2, which makes it soluble, and we can rinse that away. Now, the next thing we're going to add is going to be ETDA, and this is a chelating agent that bonds with the ferrous oxide, preventing it from bonding or rebonding to a surface. So this will allow the ferrous oxide to be rinsed away without any harm or loss to the tensile strength of the comic paper. Now, the downside of this is, as I said earlier, it is spontaneously combustible. As it decomposes at high temperatures, it undergoes a violent chemical change in elevated temperatures and pressures. It's stable when it's in its dry form, but once it's made aqueous, uh, then you have to be careful. So please do me a favor, no smoking or anything flammable around. So now that we're mixing the sodium dithionite with the ETDA, we now have a solution that we're going to use on our comic to remove the rust. Now, the maximum solubility of the sodium dithionite is about 18 grams per 100 milliliters. So what I've made up is a maximum strength just to try it out. In future, I will be reducing this down and try different times. But from experiments so far, it appears that it works the same at every level. It's just how long it takes. Now, at this level, and we'll show you in the results with the inner cover, it just took a matter of minutes, I would say 5 to 10 minutes before the rust was loose. But there were a few other harmful effects that I'm going to cover here just shortly. Now the mixture is almost fully stirred and heated. It's running clear now. And for the curious, I put a link in for this stirrer in the description. It's only $37, so I thought that was a pretty good deal. I picked that up off of Amazon, and so far it's so good. Now I'll warn you also about the chemical. It stinks to high heaven. So I'm using this into my dining room table to show you just how everything works. But yeah, it really stinks. Um, Other than that, it seems to work fairly well. We're almost done mixing it here, and what I'm going to do is go ahead and add about 200. Actually, I'm sorry. I'm going to add more distilled water, and we're going to bring the mixture up to about 50% more, so about 200 milliliters of this mixture. And we're going to go ahead and apply it directly to the cover and some wraps. And coming up after the next clip, you're going to see the results. And it's pretty amazing, actually. So we'll go ahead and do that right now. We'll fill it up with more distilled water. And now it is pretty much ready to go. Okay, so what we have here is this is the primary inner wrap. I think it's the first wrap. So as you can see, this page has been cleaned many, many times with calcium hydroxide. You can see the residue of iron oxide that's been left behind. I'm going to go ahead and take a syringe here, and we're going to apply a little bit, well, actually a lot. I'm pretty sloppy with that. Notice it's spreading out, and it immediately starts loosening the iron oxide. As this spreads out, it's bonding with the iron oxide, turning it into ferrous oxide, as we talked about earlier. And the ETDA is keeping it from rebonding to the paper as it would dry out if we let it. So it's a very slow reaction at first, but it moves fairly quickly along. After about 5 minutes, you'll see some results. Now, I'll add a little bit more here. You can see it's hard to see in the video, but it looks like some of the pieces are almost floating in there. So we're going to go ahead and roll this with a Q-tip and see if anything comes up on the Q-tip. It's not looking like it. So our next step after this will be an aqueous bath just on the spine pieces itself, because we don't want to soak up all the liquid, because it's kind of a pain to make, and plus, like I mentioned before, it really, really stinks. So I'm going to go ahead and take the syringe, and I'm going to add just a little bit more to it. We'll keep a look at it and see if it makes any changes. Now, as we do this, it seems to be lightening. I think it's getting a lot lighter, as a matter of fact. So we'll look at this. We'll take a look at another wrap here next, and we'll let this one sit for a bit. Now, what we have here is a close-up of another wrap that I've already pre-treated. As you can see, there is uh, a reaction taking place with this one as well. This book has been very challenging. The iron oxide stains, it's black iron oxide and red iron oxide mixed together. So we're going to go ahead and put a overlay on this of Hollytex, and we're going to put it in the tray, and we'll get to that next. First of all, let me apologize for jumping around on the videos. I have a lot of trays working at the same time. So let's take a look at the cover. Now, as you can see, the upper staple and the lower staple are both fully cleaned of any rust, and they were actually some of the worst in the book. You can look at some of the previous videos, you can see what I'm talking about. Now, as we go through and look, this cover is now pretty much fully ready to be mended with some Tengoji paper. We'll put that down the spine, and we'll cover the gaps in the edges. This will be a conserved grade at CGC. I'm not expecting a high grade because of the extensiveness of the repairs that are done to the book, but it will definitely be preserved for later. So I'll hold this up here so you can see the page, and then we'll flip it over. And as you can see, again, it's very clear. We have a little bit of loss of red. Now, I'm going to talk about that here next. All right, so here's a wrap that has been fully treated. It's been pressed, it's been run through the blue LED. As you can see, there's still a little bit of residual rust near the staples, near the top. The bottom one's fully been cleansed. Now, one thing I do want to point out is, notice the image. There's no red. There's a reason for that. And I didn't realize it at the time I was doing this, but red ink back in the Golden Age era, guess what it's made out of? That's right, iron oxide. It's made out of rust. So when I took out the rust out of the staple holes, I also removed the rust out of the ink. So all the red just literally evaporated. I didn't see any residue go away, but it's, as you can see, it is just gone. So in the future wraps, I think what we're going to do is see if we can isolate everything and just keep it within the confines of the staple holes. And as always, if you like the content I put out here at the channel, I try to put out a couple per week if possible, please subscribe. It's much appreciated.